What is your most embarrassing shameful hookup story? My sister walked in on me right as my cum covered D plopped out of her boyfriend's ass. I think that pretty well covers embarrassing and shameful. Last street. Patrick's Day. My group of friends and I were just balls to the wall wasted. I ended up going home with a close guy friend who knew I was tipsy but I can handle myself pretty well. Apparently worse off than I thought because in the middle of hooking up I stopped and just couldn't stop throwing up. All over his brand new expensive bed, on the wall, his pillows, just everywhere. I was so sick and my stomach was completely sour. I kicked him out of his room and I guess he slept on the couch but set everything up for me to shower, have fresh clothes, Tylenol and Gatorade and a note saying it was okay. I still cringe about it. I had to call a cab. He was gone to an 8-hour paramedic class before I got up, get my car and came back and washed his sheets, the clothes he lent, so gross, and cleaned out the trash can and the wall. I felt bad enough but didn't want to leave him to deal with it sitting for 8 hours. I still think about it every time I talk to him but he has never brought it up. TLDR. Got sick all over a close friend hookup's bed. Puke is gross. I woke up on the floor of some Japanese family's living room, and they would not stop screaming. Starting getting off with a girl in a club. Everything starts to get a bit too heavy for the middle of a bar, so we start to leave to go back to her place for some sweet boning. As we're walking into the street I hear, "So, are you my boyfriend now?" Bear in mind she was 26. I excused myself to the bathroom and ran as fast as my little legs could carry me. I've never went to bed with an unattractive girl, but I've woke up with some. That about sums it up. I lost my virginity in the bathroom at a big party. This girl was not attractive at all. When she was giving me head I asked if she wanted to have sex, to which she replied with my D in her mouth, MHMMMM. Little did I know my friends were listening on the other side of the door. To this day when I ask them if they want to do something, take a shot, go out to eat, etc., they'll respond with MHMMM. Since everyone is sharing their horrid stories, I'll share mine. I promise. This is 100% true. Anyways, I was at a mini party get together with some friends years ago, and we were all a bit buzzed. I started talking to this girl there who I've known for a couple years. No, she was not hot, but in fact, fairly chilly. We start talking and I can tell signs point to us doing some things. One thing leads to another and we end up in a coat closet and she starts unbuckling my pants and is blowing me. Then out of nowhere, whilst in mid-blow, she starts crying because her parents were in the middle of a brutal divorce. I don't know what it is about teardrops falling ever so gently onto your D, but it was the quickest deflation of a hard-on I've ever experienced. I hope her parents are okay. I left her in the closet. It looked like she needed to be alone. There was this guy I was obsessed with in high school. Literally the most popular guy in school. Super hot. I was very low on the popularity list. Not bottom, but low. Very shy and antisocial. A virgin. Also a teacher's pet. Long story short, guy somehow finds out I'm obsessed with him. He gets my email. Asks me over MSN if I wanted to come over to play Super Smash Bros. Melee. Of course I say yes. Ends up being a game of strip melee, not unlike strip poker. With every stock killed, the other person must take off a piece of clothing. 5 stock match. I remained clothed the whole time, because I'm that good. Once he's naked, he takes me to his room, and makes me give him a BJ, then jumped on me to have condomless sex. I let him get away with everything except that, and asked if he had a condom. He put his boxes on and told me to leave. I had to walk home 5 kilometers in the rain at 3 AM. TLDR. The popular guy is not always a good person. Edit. Thanks for the gold. I thought this would be just another blurred answer, so thank you all for the upvotes. I just want to clear up a couple more things quickly. It was around 12 AM when he invited me over, and it took me a long time to walk to his house. This is why I left at 3 AM. I was not there for very long. He did not physically force me to do anything. I could have easily walked out at any time, but I was emotionally tied down, and felt like I needed to please this guy because he was just so perfect. I was not a smart kid. I brought it on myself. I stayed in fear of being embarrassed in front of the guy I loved for so long. I was not sexually active in the slightest prior to this event. I do not blame this incident on him entirely. I made the choice to go through with it all, as scared as I was. One time I had drunken sex in a hotel room with a chick while several of my friends were passed out on the ground. I found out the next day they weren't all asleep. I had a girl scream at me in Spanish, in the rain outside my house. I just looked at the ground and said I can't speak Spanish. We met in the bar that night. She was very attractive and seemed stable enough. We would make out for a bit. I would make an unintentional face about something weird she said and she would lose her mind and scream at me in Spanish again. This cycle repeated until about 4 AM. I brought her home while we screamed at each other in the car. It was completely nonsensical. I wasn't mad about anything but it was exciting so I kept yelling. She got out of my car, looked at me for a good 30 seconds and silently walked away. I never saw her again. I can't remember her name, but I'll never forget that night. Came home drunk with this girl I had a crush on years before. We went on a date and it went nowhere. But that night we were at a party up the street from my house and I was one of the only people she knew. So we end up hooking up at the party and one thing led to another. We end up at my place. Bear in mind I'm wasted but I'm still thoughtful enough not to have sex on my bed because it's squeaky. Turns out so was this girl. My roommate is furious. Woken up to drunken sex so she holds my door open and says she won't let it close until we leave the house. No idea about the logic there. According to the girl I got up and said if you're going to embarrass me, at least let me finish. Oh man. My roommate still hasn't said a word about it, and the girl wouldn't stop laughing. That's when I decided I couldn't live with my mom anymore. Short version. First time hooking up with dude. I perioded all over his bed. Birthday when I was 17. Went into the laundry room drunk with my girlfriend to have some interesting sexy time. Railing my girlfriend over the washer. Dad opens the door. Edit. Great, my two most upvoted comments ever are about my hilariously embarrassing hookup. Thanks for the karma, Dad. A girl one time puked all over me whilst giving me a BJ. I just laughed really. I once went home with somebody because I heard he had an awesome apartment and I wanted to see it. I ended up giving him a drunken BJ and throwing up all over his junk. The next day my dear looked like I was blown by a piranha. I have a few, but this one is particularly shameless. I go out to the bar and start talking to a girl. We both get pretty drunk. Start making out on the dance floor. etc. She tells me she's from out of town and is staying at a hotel. And her mom is with her. No problem, I say, because my place is just a short walk from there, and I can walk her to the hotel in the morning. Flash forward to me coming to my senses in the hotel. Her mom sleeping in the same room, and I'm having morning sex with her daughter, right next to mom. We also had sex the night before, next to her mom. I went home with a guy while in Spain. His apartment had 2 glass doors to exit. Kind of like a glass box. I left the first and tried to open the second. It was locked. I didn't realize that there was a button you had to press. I didn't have the number of the guy, much less his last name or his apartment number, having been too drunk to realize what it was. And so I stood in my heels, messed up makeup, and a tight dress in a glass cage for an hour and a half while all the Spanish people went to church until someone finally came into the building and let me out. I live in a small rural area in the UK. One night I got very drunk and coked up and was refused entry to a terrible local nightclub. I went home and changed my clothes and hairstyle and was refused entry a second time, nearly made it past the bouncers though. Anywho, whilst shouting at the bouncers from across the road, a girl pulled up and said she was going to a party. She had 2 friends in the car, and everything seemed dandy until she basically kidnapped me back to her house. At this point I discover she is using crutches and wearing a back brace. She also has a disabled sticker in her car, is overweight and has bright red hair. After discussing her disability for a bit we go to bed. Did I mention the coke? And for the first and last time in my life I have an unprotected one night stand. She dropped me off and I kissed her goodbye. What is possibly the most disconcerting part is that it is the only time I have ever felt the muscular spasms of a girl definitely orgasming, even after 7 years with the current GF. The second most disconcerting part is that I must have been imprecise with my aim because she offered me the baby lotion in her drawer to do her up the ass. Also, she had probably not had sex for a while and referred to me as her angel. Oh. And I may have a child that is about 10 years old with a disabled mother. The girl I was hooking up with started a screaming argument with her roommate while I was still inside her. One time in my first year of college I hooked up with this guy named Dylan in our dorms. I was really drunk a couple nights later and wanted to find him. So I began wandering around. I arrived what I thought was his room and the door was open a crack. So I open it to see two guys I've never seen before on their computers playing games. I sit on the closest bed and start talking about Dylan and they said they didn't know him. I eventually invite the guy whose bed I was on over. We start fooling around and his roommate, who had still been playing video games, decides to leave. I want sex, but he says he's a virgin. I asked what he's done. He says he'd never even kissed a girl. Oops. Later I found out I was on the 4th floor and not the 5th where Dylan's room was. TL. Dr. Guy received his first kiss for having a conveniently located dorm room. I was in Belgium and went straight to the bar after sightseeing all day, so I didn't have the chance to take off my money belt under my clothes. I ended up getting really drunk and totally forgot it was on anyways. I met some cool Australian dude and went home with him, and as our clothes start flaring off, he suddenly paused with a surprise, trying to contain his laughter reaction as he looked down onto a naked woman with a lame Canadian marked jam-packed belt strapped around me. Wasn't sure why he was confused until I looked down. No way to recover, but after a long pause and shrug, the night continued onwards. I was at a great part, everyone was having a fantastic time, and this girl and I really hit it off. We made that night very memorable, at least until the alcohol really started flowing. It must have been 1 stroke 2 past beer or beer 30 when things really started to get fuzzy. At some point a dog collar got passed around the party, and I have forever been immortalized as having worn that collar proudly with her as my master. One year for a New Year's party while I was in university, I went to my friend's girlfriend's. The party was with her high school friends, so me and my friend did not know anyone else there other than his girlfriend and her best friend, a very large girl who had quite the reputation. One story that came up involved her being sodomized on a football field, which when brought up she just laughed off. Since I did not know anyone, I decided I would drink until I started being more social. My last memory was taking a beer out of the fridge thinking I hope I have enough beer. My next memory is me on top of this whale not using any protection on a mattress in her bathroom and thinking how did this happen. The next morning I woke up before and realized my friend was my ride, so I couldn't leave, so I just went to the other room, slept on the couch and pretended to be asleep when she got up. To top it all off, several months later after the wounds had healed, my friend told me that she had also had sex with a guy earlier in the night in the washroom in between making out with me, and that was the story of how I lost my virginity. In college, the row on my dorm floor kept a cardboard box with condoms in it attached to the wall just above eye level by his door in the hallway. I had a date one night and slyly grabbed a rubber out of the box as I was walking down the hall and quickly put it in my pocket. Fast forward to that night and the moment has arrived. We are naked under the sheets in the dark and I reach into my pants pocket for the Jimmy hat. I open it under the sheets and get powder all over my fingers and it smells like poultry. Confused, I turn on the light and it's a ramen noodle flavor packet. I didn't get laid that night. Was talking to this girl in college. Finally got her alone and naked. We started boning and I couldn't believe how wet she really was. It felt amazing. So good that I came within a minute. I was so embarrassed. Then I looked down and realized she had her period and she was a heavy bleeder. It looked like a massacre in my bed. I have a story about a hookup that I've posted before. But here goes. I took this girl home who had actually told me a couple weeks before to stop hitting on her. We were both really drunk, but it was still awesome. Really nice time with her, especially because I had been crushing on her for a while and she had been denying me. Anyways, I took her home and things were getting heavy and she asked if I had a condom. Of course I did. I reached to my normal storage space, grabbed one, and then noticed that my little friend wasn't cooperating. Good ole whiskey D. I figured I had to at least try. What other opportunity would I have? So I work it up to half a chub, put the condom on and tried. and it sort of worked. It did not work, but definitely wasn't enjoyable for either party. So I told her that I didn't think it would work, so I went down on her for a while. We cuddled and went to sleep. In the morning, things were getting pretty heated again, and she asked if I wanted to try again. I couldn't believe that I had another chance at that, so I went to grab another condom, and my heart stopped. I had none left. None. I looked at her with the solemnest of faces, and she told me, "Well, I know you're disappointed, but I'm not getting laid either." As she was leaving, I told her I wanted to see her again. She didn't think it would be a good idea, and still doesn't. The kicker is my hungover brain didn't remember I had a condom in my backpack and also one in my pants pocket. TL. Doctor, I used my last condom when I had whiskey D. Couldn't have sex with a girl I had been crushing on forever. All I'm getting from this thread is that Reddit drinks too much. I was ducking my girlfriend as I was vigorously stabbing her meat willet in the position of the dog. I came to a sudden realization. I was about to unleash my seed. Now this was no two-pump chump situation, but I really wasn't ready for this moment. I pulled out and attempted to wrangle the bastard. I fought valiantly. Any man who has attempted this feat knows that the pressure build-up can be immense. Needless to say, I lost the battle. The angle of my schlong was not ideal. This was a case of the friendliest of fire, as the pressure released uncontrollably. The trajectory of my man missile happened to be my face. Let's just say I lost the battle and war. Edit. Bad language skills. I made out with a girl in a Teletubby costume. Biggest college regret to this day. She was dressed as Poe. Suddenly the time I made out with someone who kept quoting Electric Six's Gibbar seems so normal. During summer session at my small university, there were really barely any people around and I hadn't had sex in months. Female. BTW. So one drunken night I went home with a guy I had met from our Hillel Jew club, and OHH God, I barely remember the night before, but the morning after was awful. First, I farted myself awake, which was pretty bad, and I still don't know if he heard it. Probably did. Then when he woke up 2 minutes later, he tried to have sex with me again without even really asking me. For some reason I thought, okay, what the hell, and didn't really refuse. Ended up him trying to jam his mostly soft D into me for a few minutes and then giving up and then asking if I would like to take a shower. I accepted, wanting to wash every trace of him off me. When I got in the shower, surprise, he came in right after me. So I had to endure this shower that I guess was supposed to be sexy that I just wanted to get over with. I would have just left at this point, but my apartment was miles away and he was my only ride. The worst part, in the middle of the shower I saw he was kind of facing the wall for a bit and I didn't think much of it. Then came the smell, and yellow water touching my toes. Was this guy seriously pissing in the shower with someone he barely knows? Anyway, he ended up awkwardly handing me a Perkins coupon he had laying around, offering to go with me sometime. Awkward as duck. Have been avoiding all contact with him since, which is pretty difficult. Made out with a guy at a party once. He kept following me around with his hand on my lower back afterwards, which really annoyed me. I get unbearably honest when I'm drunk. So I turned around after about half an hour and said, "You're annoying and creepy, go away." The awkwardness didn't hit me until I sobered up. I see him on campus every now and then. He definitely hates me. Edit. I'm fully aware that I overreacted and that there are more tactful and polite ways to respond to someone who is making me uncomfortable. This is an embarrassing hookup story of mine, not my general reaction in every situation. I dated this doctor for a while very casually. He wasn't my type intellectually, but he was hot and a good piece of ass. One night I drove over to his place, where he lived alone, at like midnight after his shift to hook up. I didn't turn on any lights or anything, so I just made my way back to his bedroom. We hooked up, loudly, I might add, and fooled around for a few hours. The next morning I woke up and began to go down on him. Suddenly, some guy bursts into the room wearing a Viking hat and boxers asking when they're leaving. Turns out he had like 6 of his frat brothers staying there. He failed to mention any of this the night before when we had loud animal sex with the door wide open. I experienced my first, and only, walk of shame that next morning. TL. DR. Hooked up with a douche. Experience the walk of shame. Big surprise. Ha. Over 20 years ago, I was 21 or 22. Big party at a co-worker's house. 1 microdot of acid. Smoked some weed. Ate a bunch of fruit that had been soaked in Everclear alcohol. She was big. Not curvy big. I'm cool with curvy. I'm talking spherical big. Big and tall and just. Really big. I nailed her in the backseat of her Cadillac. Apparently I was back there going at it for hours. Her Cadillac was parked right in front of the house. Right by the sidewalk. So every single person that left the party bore witness to my pasty white ass. Positively glowing in the moonlight. Just jackhammering away. I have no memory of any of this. So how do I know about it? Photos were taken. Okay, so not me but my friend. We were all hammered at this girl's house, let's say around junior year of HS. My friend was hooking up with this girl for his first time ever and they were sitting under a window in the wall. Me and my other friend were on the other side watching, thinking that we did well hooking them up and getting him his first kiss. Then my friend who's kissing the girl stops and starts unbuttoning his pants. He then says, "So you're going to suck my D, right?" The girl looked so creeped out and was like, no. Me and my other friend started dying. At a staff Christmas party, a few of us ended up at one our co-worker's place and she had a hot tub. 3 of us decided to use it. Myself, another woman and my boss. I ended up sexing it up with the boss in front of this other girl and took a cab back to his house. The next day was Christmas Eve. I quickly found my clothes, wished him a Merry Christmas and got a cab back to my car. I had to face my co-workers after the holidays knowing they had all seen me naked. That is shame. Hooked up with a girl in my shower after a night out. I found her Nuva ring the next morning in my drain. She didn't want it back. In the park next to the club where I had wooed a 4/10 fatty. Had been going missionary for some time with her laid on my coat. The launch codes had been entered and verified. At this point I could only ensure damage limitation. I pulled out and aimed it downwards. Critical hit on my coat. Had to walk home in my coat. Everyone reading the stories to make sure they are not the subject of someone else's embarrassing story. Took a girl to a room at a party. Thought she was a good 7 or 8 and willing to put out, so naturally I was expecting some action that night. We were both pissed drunk and the only thing I can remember is that we started making out and she had her pants while on top of me. She ducking at her pants while straddling Annie. I felt a bit of her poop slime drip on my leg. I got as far away from her as possible. I once tried to make a clean getaway in the morning and ended up getting hit in the head by his ceiling fan. Poor guy woke up to me screaming and gushing blood from the head. I still maintain it was his fault for putting his lofted bed right under a ceiling fan. In college I hooked up with 2 very horny girls. They were 10s when you combined their scores together. And they both left my house with anger and disappointment after 20 minutes. Capital I, on the other hand, had a great ducking time. 100% drunk. Virgin me. Successfully hooks up with cute sorority girl at a frat party. She offers to go back to her place. Off we go. Commence blackout. Next morning, she makes me breakfast and acts strangely sympathetic. I have no idea what the duck happened. A week later, her sorority starts calling me baby. My name here. I laughed it off thinking it was because I am a tad baby faced. But one day I was curious and asked a girl who I was friends with, not original girl. That ship sailed and sunk. And apparently I had started crying shortly after getting her top off. Then we talked for a bit and fell asleep. I think that accounts for the embarrassment and shame you were looking for. My boyfriend was over one night while I was in HS. We were going at it on the dining room table. He heard my dad get up and start to come downstairs. I couldn't find my pants. Panicked and ran into the kitchen. My boyfriend had his pants on. My dad started to walk towards the kitchen. Boyfriend picked up a giant jar of change and spilled it all over the floor and used the excuse of picking it up to physically block the entrance to the kitchen with his body. My dad walked past him anyways. My genius idea at this point was to open the refrigerator and try to close myself inside. My dad of course walked over and opened the fridge door, took one look at me trying to keep my bits covered, and walked back upstairs. To this day he has never brought it up. This past summer at one of notoriously sloppy work parties I outdid myself. It was one of my good friends, brother's best friend. First time drinking and he was all over the roughest female I work with. I blacked out. When I woke up in the morning I was given the play-by-play on what happened. I went to the room where they were spending alone time and busted in screaming, "Colleen, get away from Michael." So I just keep rambling off swear words at her until I say, "Suck my D." She says, "Okay, I'll suck your D." In my blackout state thought it was a great idea. So I start receiving fellatio while my friend is in the room. She convinces him to give her a back massage while I'm getting blown. I tell her I'm too drunk and won't come, so I try to leave, but one of my friends then barges in and gives us condoms, completely changing my mindset. The first thing I come up with is that we have to Eiffel Tower. So I end up having a devil's three-way with my brother's best friend. TLDR got trashed and I Eiffel Towered a female co-worker with my twin brother's best friend. After a night out I met a woman at McDonald's who was with some of her friends. We start talking and eventually go outside for a bit to hook up, small amount of fooling around. I got her number and after texting her for a while found out she was 37. I was 19 at the time and realized the thought of her coming to my uni accommodation to sleep with me would have raised many eyebrows. Woo, throwaway time. So I've only had sex once. Just over 4 years ago now. I googled around a bit for escorts, found a review site, spent a day or two finding a trustworthy independent lady, emailed back and forth a bit and set a date. I was awkward. I was nervous. I'm sure I was boring and crappy. And it was terrible for me too. Because all the years of daily raw dogging it to porn had desensitized me beyond the warm charms of a loose cougar-esque professional slow cooker. So after nearly an hour I still couldn't come. I had only paid for half an hour but she seemed genuinely nice. Went through the whole embarrassing, well, I guess it was just nerves. It was fun anyway. No, it really wasn't. It was a hard-learned life lesson, but not a positive one. I still have many personal issues at almost age 26. Have never dated, never kissed, etc. And that sure as hell didn't help anything. Probably created a few more issues. So yeah, there ya go. You wanted embarrassing and shameful. I posted this somewhere else before but here it is again. I'm in high school and a couple months ago I was at a party and this girl I was talking to started to kiss me. My first kiss. I freaked out and didn't even move my lips. She asked what was wrong and I said I'm not gonna get in trouble for